Okay, welcome. My name is Nisa Flagger, and I am Vice Mayor of Los Altos and also the Legislative Action Committee Chair for the Cities Association of Santa Clara County. The Cities Association is an association of the 15 cities of the County of Santa Clara and the elected representatives of more than 1.9 million Bay Area residents. Since 1990, these representatives have been successfully collaborating to discuss and find consensus and solutions for regional issues to best serve our community. Our mission is to strive for a unified voice to support our diverse cities and constituents of all backgrounds. Our cities range from a few thousand people to a city of over 1 million people. Today is our third conversation with one of our local state representatives. I am very pleased to welcome Assembly Member Marc Berman. Welcome, Marc.
Thanks so much, Nisa. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So Assembly Member Berman was first elected to the California State Assembly in November 2016 to represent the 24th District, which includes the southern part of San Mateo County and the northern part of Santa Clara County. In the Assembly, Assemblyman Berman serves as chair of the Committee on Elections and Redistricting. He also serves on the following Assembly standing committees, which are governmental organization, insurance, privacy and consumer protection, and transportation. You're very busy, Assemblymember Berman. In his first 3 years in the Assembly, he has authored legislation related to a number of issues, including elections, the 2020 census, education, youth mental health, sexual assault, firearms safety, housing, and the environment. Marc has sent 47 bills to the governor in his first 3 years in office. Marc also served on the Palo Alto City Council prior to being elected to the Assembly. Thanks again for joining us, Assemblymember Berman. And I will start by saying, how are you? How is your family?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. And we're good. We're good. You know, all things considered, we're healthy. We're employed. And given everything happening these days, you know, that's probably the most we can ask for. We actually, my wife and I, sadly, moved out of Santa Clara County and into San Mateo County. Yes.
That's blasphemy.
It is. We had to get a new passport and everything when we crossed San Francisco Creek.
Right.
We moved to Menlo Park.
Wow. Nice.
Kind of late last year. And while for me, you know, I grew up in Palo Alto. I served on the city council in Palo Alto. Was very bittersweet. But we are very happy that we have more space now than we had in my little 2-bedroom condo in Palo Alto last year. So given that Amy, my wife, works full time, and so we're not sitting on top of each other while we're doing all of our Zoom calls and conference calls and a whole lot of calls. So it's been, we've both spent more time together than we ever anticipated.
Right.
But she's still
especially as relatively newlyweds.
That's right. But she's still we had our 1-year anniversary when COVID, kind of soon after COVID hit and the shelter-in-place orders hit. And so we had a picnic in the park to celebrate our 1-year anniversary at a park where we had our third date. So it was, we made it cute. You made it cute. Yeah.
Well, sorry to hear. I hadn't heard that you left Santa Clara County.
I know.
We'll miss you and your taxes and everything else. But you're not that far.
No. It's probably a mile from where my condo was in downtown Palo Alto. We're not far at all. So we still give plenty of sales tax to a lot of the restaurants in Santa Clara County.
Great. Yeah. And with all these adjustments that you just mentioned, and of course, congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. I don't know if you've had time to even read, but I'm curious if you have found the time. What are you reading?
So it's funny, and it's very kind of apropos. On our honeymoon late last year, I started reading a book called, I think it's A Gentleman in Moscow. which is about a count in Russia who, after the Bolshevik Revolution, gets there's some charge that's brought against him, and he has this kind of tribunal with the expectation that he's going to be shot. And instead of that, he finagles his way to house arrest at a hotel in Moscow, which feels so appropriate for all of us these days. And I'd read half of the book on our honeymoon, and then I haven't read it at all until about a week ago, actually, when I picked it back up and started reading it again. And it is so, he makes the best of this really rough situation. Of living in a certain confine, sheltered in place, that's exactly right. And how much fun and kind of mischief can you get into while you're sheltered in place? So it was a very appropriate kind of book, and it's really a fantastic book. The writing, the dialogue in it is just really I'll be sitting there reading it on my Kindle, and my wife will be next to me, and I'll just start laughing, and she'll look at me like I'm crazy. And those are, the best kinds of books. So I highly recommend it. Yes, they are. Yeah.
No, I'll note that. That's good. It's funny you mentioned you started reading it on your honeymoon and put it down and picked it back up. In the past, in my younger days, I used to force myself into finishing books. Like, even if I wasn't enjoying a book or I got distracted with something else, I just felt like I started it and I had to finish it. Yeah. There are so many more books today, Mark, that I start and I never finish. Yeah. And I don't feel compelled to do it. I'm done. I'm like, I'm not enjoying it. I got distracted with something else, and that's okay. And sometimes I do exactly what you did, which is you pick it back up a year later. Yeah. And appreciate it for other reasons.
Yeah. I'm the same way. There was a point where my bedside table had like 4 books. Yes. That I started and not finished. Same. And we get distracted by city council packets or bills or it's there comes a point in our jobs where you just don't even want to read even for fun. So
you need something else to escape it all.
Yeah.
No, I completely understand. So have you acquired any COVID-related skills? So we've heard of people picking up baking or, emptying the garage or organizing the garage, things that they've always needed to do or wanted to do and didn't have the time, but now that they're home, they're doing it. What about you? And what's your wife's name, Mark?
Amy.
Yeah. Have you and or Amy picked up any COVID-related skills that you can share?
Amy's definitely been cooking more. I want, in theory, I want to cook, and it just never happens. The other day, I got forced into it by a friend was having her 40th birthday on Zoom because we couldn't get together in person.
Right.
So she did this cooking challenge. And Amy had to work and she couldn't help me. And so I was forced into going way outside of my comfort zone on cooking, and it worked out all right. It was actually a kind of good.
Who tested it? Like, let's make sure when you say it worked out okay.
Amy tested it, and not only did she test it, she ate it all. Like, she didn't even leave my portion. Like, I kind of pigged out on the dessert part of the challenge, and so I wasn't that hungry for the dinner part, and it was just how I like to operate.
Yes, I agree.
And so that was fun, but we haven't. I put a grill together the other weekend, about a week ago. I finally went out and bought a big old grill for that fits the new house.
Right. Nice.
And but I haven't actually. I need to go get a propane tank, so I haven't actually lit up the grill yet. But that'll probably be my one thing that I put a bunch of time into is, getting better at it, which is a kind of cooking. It's
right.
Cooking. Yeah.
Yeah. That counts.
Yeah.
But let us know once we can visit each other again. Make sure I'm on that short list.
Exactly.
For the
party. Deal. We did the first thing we did, I think, when COVID hit was we binge watched all of the British Baking Show.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, Amy did it. I think they're like 7 seasons. I watched 2 or 3. Amy watched the other 3 or 4 on her own. But so we the desire is there.
Right.
But now we just need to find a little more time.
No.
So, yeah.
So fun. I mean, we have to find that silver lining.
Yes.
Yeah. So with COVID obviously disrupting, changing, some for the positive or personal lives, let's talk about Sacramento and how COVID has impacted the sessions there, the work that's being done, and just the priorities.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that, Assemblymember Berman?
Yeah, it's disrupted everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it really has. And all of us get into public service because we love engaging with people. We love meeting in person. We love, those conversations, and we can't do any of that now. And so it's been a challenge, both with constituents and advocates and local groups. But even when we're in Sacramento, we can't have the huddling up and the kind of intense conversations on the floor or in a committee hearing, or getting together after hearings to talk about different issues or talk about strategy. We just can't do any of that anymore. So it has also caused us or forced us to significantly streamline the number of bills that we're hearing this year.
Right.
So just yesterday, I think another local elected from San Mateo County reached out and said, "Hey, is the legislature doing anything on this one issue?" And I said, "No." And she said, "They should." And I said, "I know." But we'll be going back hopefully in a week, next Monday, July 27th. And we're going to cram 3 months of work into 5 weeks.
Amazing.
But yeah,
I do not envy you.
It's not ideal,
Right, exactly. For the quality. Yep.
Exactly. But we have certain statutory deadlines for when session ends.
Which you told me, because I had that question on a different conversation where I'm thinking, I wondered whether we could extend the deadline, and you basically pointed out that no, this is statutory.
Yeah.
So you don't have much flexibility or leeway there.
Yeah, August 31st is the last day that the legislature can pass bills and send them to the governor. And so we've all had to streamline. I had 20 or 22 bills that I was planning on introducing this year. We ended up narrowing it down to 6 or 7 that in our minds focus on COVID-related issues. It's not necessarily healthcare specifically, but it's issues that are impacted by COVID. I take that back. One bill isn't really, but it's an easy bill that should sail through and shouldn't have any problems. But the first thing, the most immediate thing that I started focusing on as chair of the elections committee was the upcoming election in November. And we all saw in early April the primary in Wisconsin, where it was just a total disaster. And you had people standing in line for miles and hours and risking their health.
Yes.
And that shouldn't be the case in California. That shouldn't be the case in America. And so I amended a bill. I had a bill that was already in the Senate that we weren't going to move forward on that issue. And I took that language out and I inserted language to require that we send a ballot to every active voter in California in the mail for this November election. And so that was, we want to give voters and we want to give elections officials confidence about what the process and the requirements will be as early as possible. So that actually, we were able to get that bill through the legislature very quickly. I was proud to get strong bipartisan support for the bill, which is important, I think, especially when it comes to our election system. And it was signed by the governor maybe a month ago or so. So
congratulations, Marc.
Thank you.
That's good. That's huge.
Yeah, so that was good. And then I'm also focusing a lot on, you mentioned kind of earlier, higher education is a big kind of passion of mine. And in particular, basic needs for our college students. So housing insecurity, homelessness, food insecurity. And so I have 2 bills focused on kind of basic needs support, mostly targeted at our community college students. those are the systems where the students are struggling the most with homelessness and food insecurity. But I'm running into trouble. The bills passed out of the Assembly. Both of them had strong bipartisan support. They're now in the Senate, and I'm having to really lobby the chairs of the Senate committees to hear the bill, to set the bill for a hearing, because they have so many bills and will only have one hearing per policy committee. Usually we can have 2 or 3, but because of the timing and the spatial requirements of COVID, we can only have one. And so now I'm trying to, having to really lobby and convince them that no, this is important. It's all, a couple of them are also very non-controversial. So trying to get them to set the bill for a hearing, as opposed to having to punt it to next year. So, fingers crossed that we'll be successful on that.
And Marc, just so you know, one of the things we normally wrap up these interviews with is asking, how can we help or support you? You're a representative, but we also want to support you. So, if this is something that you would like us to take back to our members and maybe put together a letter, to the chair of these committees, letting them know how important it is. And I actually think, you mentioned you narrowed down your, X number of bills to 6 or 7, and the lens you looked through was the COVID lens, which I've heard from others as well. And so these bills that you're referring to that impact community college kids directly relates to COVID, because, these issues, as you know, existed before COVID, and they're only worse now before COVID. So the need is even greater.
Yep.
You can put, and the plan right now, as you know, is for people to continue working, studying and school virtually. And just how are they going to do it? I mean, and then the devices and the resources they're going to need in order to succeed and compete. Yep. I mean, to me, it's daunting. It's what I think about it. And so I think these are important bills, and I agree with you. I think, personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Cities Association, but I think this is something that if we can help with, let me know, and we can take it back to the board. To send a letter saying we think it should be a priority for this session.
Well, I appreciate that, and you just defended it better than I do. So I'm going to give you the senator's phone number. You just give her a call. But you're spot on.
Right. He'd be like, Nasa Fligor, who? Yes.
Vice mayor. So
I have fun when people butcher my name.
People misspell my name all the time, but I'm sure they you get the mispronunciation much more. I will tell you, one of the worst examples I saw of mispronouncing elected official's name was at I'm trying to think, am I going to throw somebody under the bus? I think I'm going to throw somebody under the bus.
You don't have to name names.
It was I won't name names, and you can't go back and watch.
Okay.
It was at I think it was earlier this year, the governor's State of the State address. He gives a State of the State address every year. But the lieutenant governor also has a kind of speaking role before the governor speaks. And the lieutenant governor is Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis.
Yes.
And people butcher Kounalakis miserably.
I know.
Including, and so this person, when they were introducing the lieutenant governor, said, and I spent so much time in the office getting Kounakalis right, and they thought they had it. Yeah. And I was like, oh, A for effort.
Especially because you're doing the introduction.
And it's every state elected official and the media and it was funny. It was funny.
And painful, I'm sure.
I can only imagine. So yes.
So the next thing I have for you, Marc, is I know you've done a lot of work on this, and as Vice Mayor of Los Altos, I don't know if we're still ahead, but I know maybe 3 months ago we were way ahead of the other cities in Santa Clara County on our census. And so what is going on there? Is it done? What was the as a cities association?
So I lost you so give me that one more time because we had a little technical difficulty.
Oh,
Yeah.
so then I was
It's
asking about the census, and I was
yes.
bragging that Los Altos was leading at
Yeah.
one point. Did
Yeah.
you get that part where I was bragging?
I lost you during the bragging.
Okay, so yes, so at some point we were way ahead. But what's the status? Is it still open? What was the participation rate in Santa Clara County? Are you concerned that we didn't get enough participation and how that may impact us?
Yeah. So thank you for the question. And it's such an important issue and something that I've been working on for almost 3 years now. And we thought we'd be done pretty much by this point, but we're not.
COVID.
Honestly. And I had multiple calls on it last week and I've got one tomorrow or Wednesday. And so, speaking of disrupting, COVID, we right when we were going to be transitioning from the primary election to census outreach, COVID hit, and all our best census outreach plans were focused on in-person communication and in-person outreach, and all of that got shut down. So I haven't checked in a week or so, but the last I looked, San Mateo County, and I think total praise, that's not the word I want. I'm just losing the word. I take all the credit for what has happened. I'm kidding. But San Mateo County and Santa Clara County were first and second in the state for self-response rate for the census. And both counties were very close to their 2010 self-response rate, which is really good. Yeah. We kind of break down the census operations to the self-response rate, which is the period that people have to reply on their own. And then the part of the campaign where we go out, where enumerators go knock on doors and try to, it's less self-response and it's more you're responding based on, more outreach and somebody trying to convince you. And so if we could get every county in the state to get to its 2010 self-response rate by the end of July, then that would be fantastic. The Bay Area is doing pretty well. San Francisco struggling a little bit. LA County is the hardest to count state, the hardest to count county in the country. And it's also 1/4 of our population in California. And so LA County is struggling a little bit. I think Kern County and a few others are a little bit behind. So we still have a lot of work to do. The census period was supposed to end, the census was supposed to end at the end of July.
Right.
That's been pushed back to the end of October. So the federal government pushed that deadline back because of the COVID disruption. And so we are still very focused on, how can we get back to some of that more person-to-person outreach. We feel like we've accomplished what we're going to accomplish with social media ads and TV ads and radio ads and the less personal communication. But now we need to really triple down on phone banking. Hopefully, if things get in a better place, we can get back to door knocking and some of the more in-person outreach to the hard-to-count communities who have not self-responded yet. So the good thing is we can hyper-target our efforts now, which is good because we've also spent most of the money that we'd put towards this, which was $187 million. We had put an immense amount of money for the state towards this. But I think we're in a pretty good place, but there are definitely some areas of the state where we really need to drill down and get those numbers up. But I bet Los Altos is looking good. I haven't looked. I'll have to go look right after this. And I'm very proud that San Mateo County and Santa Clara County are 1 and 2. For a while, Santa Clara County was first, San Mateo County was second, and then they switched. So there's still time to switch back. There's still time for Santa Clara to get back in first. Really.
Not that I'm competitive or anything.
Neither am I. Yes. No, not at all. And our counties are doing such a good job. The counties.
I agree.
Doing a ton.
And with LA County, I can definitely understand the challenges there. And then you have COVID.
Yeah, right.
There have been so many things that have happened where I can see, certain groups in our communities not wanting to participate. There's so many reasons why I think it's, you had to do all that you did even before COVID to reach, all the corners of our communities.
Yeah.
Get them to participate and understand why it's important, that it actually will benefit these corners of our community.
Honestly.
And then even with COVID. So again, seriously, thanks for everything. I know you have been working hard on this, so thank you.
No, I love it. And I mean, to your point, a colleague of mine put it in a really poignant way 2 years ago, when she said, or maybe 2.5 years ago, when she said, I think it was 2.5 years ago, she said for the last year, so this was probably early 2017 when she said this. She said, for the last year, early 2018. She said, for the last year, I've been telling my constituents, if the federal government shows up at your door, don't answer. Now it's going to be, if the federal government shows up at your door, don't answer unless it's the census. That's a very nuanced kind of argument to make.
Right. We have to figure out, if that's the case, then we should give our, I don't know what they're called, it's not a political campaign, but our walkers, something to basically mark to slip under the door, like we are census. Like, what I mean? Because they're not going to answer. They will not answer. The whole idea is to stay quiet. So if you knock and you want them to answer, you have to slip something under and say, it's safe.
Yeah, exactly right.
Part of the census.
Exactly right.
But again, I mentioned that I do not envy any of our friends or colleagues or other residents, Mark, who have to run for election this year.
Mm-hmm. Are you not up? Were you elected in 18?
18. Remember, I lost in 16.
Yeah.
So I got elected 18, and it's a 4-year term. So I'm good.
Yeah. I'm jealous.
Yes. Well, you're yes. Yes. Well, let's switch topics to transportation.
Yes.
As you know, there's just been so much in the news, and a lot of discussion about Caltrans again has significantly impacted our residents' commute, and the demand for public transportation has. Can
you got a little choppy there. Are you back?
I am back. I actually got the message saying my internet connection was unstable, so I knew something had happened.
Gotcha.
Let me jump to the question.
Yeah.
Based on the recent vote by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, what do you think will happen with the sales tax measure?
Oh boy. I hope that my dear friends on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors see the light and put it back on their agenda tomorrow.
That's being considered. Okay.
It is being considered. So there's still a very, very, very outside chance. Tomorrow will be a big day for the sales tax, the Caltrain measure, because it could be brought up both the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and the San Francisco Transit Agency, was it NPC or whatever it is. So there's still a very small chance that this gets put on the ballot, that these government agencies take it up and approve it and put it on the ballot. And I really hope they do, because I think everyone understands that there are governance questions and issues that people have.
That was going to be my follow-up question, because everything I've read about it, one of the primary concerns is the current governance structure. Yeah,
and there really seems to be some strange confusion about that. But it's in the sense that, I mean, I've seen the people that are threatening to keep this off the ballot, some of the elected officials that are threatening to keep this off the ballot, are saying that one county, San Mateo County, makes 100% of the decisions. But the reality is that there's a joint powers board of Caltrain that has 3 members from Santa Clara County, 3 members from San Mateo County, and 3 members from San Francisco County. So, that is the governing body that makes the decisions. The staff yes, is
It's
part
of the transit district, right?
for San Mateo County.
Yeah.
Because decades ago, when, frankly, from my understanding, when Santa Clara County and San Francisco County did not want to do it, San Mateo, when Caltrain was less popular and was a bigger headache, San Mateo County was willing to step up, and their transit agency was willing to take over the operations for Caltrain. But the governance is still decided one third for each county. And so,
Right.
that's not to say that it can be improved, and it's not to say that we shouldn't have those conversations, but please, to these certain elected officials, don't hold up the financial viability of Caltrain based on a turf war. Because we all represent people. And at the end of the day, those people, once COVID, once we recover from COVID.
Do you have a radio on in the background, Mark?
I don't. But I think we might have solved it.
Okay. They heard us.
Yes. I think we should have that conversation around governance, but we desperately need Caltrain to continue operating. You and I know how important it is for the communities that we represent. Both my wife used to take Caltrain up to San Francisco for her job. Now she just walks to our little cottage in the backyard. With this crowd,
like we all do.
Yeah,
we just walk to another room in the house or another building. Yeah.
Yeah, and with this crowd, I can say ADU. Right. Usually when I'm talking to people, I say ADU. What is that? We have a little ADU in the back where that Amy has turned into her office. Nice. But she relies on Caltrain. People need Caltrain, and so let's not hold up the financial viability of Caltrain, and then let's definitely have those governance conversations. I think there are a lot of governance conversations that we should have around transit that are probably worth having in the next couple of years. So I support having those conversations, but hopefully we don't kill this funding measure as a part of it.
Well, I'll watch. I didn't realize the San Francisco board is going to reconsider it tomorrow, so I'll watch that vote.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yep. Are there any transportation bills? So the second part of what I was saying had to do with COVID and how COVID has changed, similar to Amy now just walking to her cottage.
Yeah.
COVID has impacted how we use public transportation, and as we're all telecommuting and working from home. Are there any transportation bills or initiatives in Sacramento that we need to be aware of that factors that in?
It's a great question. I'm not familiar with, I know we're just hoping and praying and begging and asking for more support from the federal government, just for funding, so that these agencies can continue to operate when their fare box returns have practically evaporated to nothing. I don't know of any bills that are kind of directly on point with that. There are always conversations around, high-speed rail and whether or not we should, there's currently some funding that from the 2010 bond measure, and there's a debate that we're starting to have about whether or not that funding should go to the bookends, which would be the Bay Area and LA, instead of being as focused on this stretch in the Central Valley.
Yep. Okay.
And so there aren't any bills on that this year necessarily, but people are starting to kind of debate the different options and the merits of each. But we really we know how important these transit agencies are and these services are to our constituents. We know for good reason that people are hesitant to use them right now. But we know that any, first world society needs a robust, strong public transportation system once, we get back to normal. And so we need to do everything that we can. And then once you shut an agency down, once you shut, something like Caltrain down, it costs so much more to get it back up running again. And so I think that's the goal right now is just, trying to do everything that we can to keep these systems running. And we know right now that people are relying on public transit, and it's our most vulnerable communities that are essential workers.
Right.
And so, who might not own cars, or who might not live within walking distance to work, or who can't
work from home. Right.
Exactly. So, it's important to keep that in mind also.
No, I agree, Mark. And with everything that's going on, it's an election year, COVID, all these different issues that we've been talking about. On top of all of that, we have the renewed calls to action for more social justice, and ensuring that, our systems at all level eradicate systemic racism in America.
Yeah.
You mentioned, when we were talking about COVID and voting and the lines in Wisconsin, and they were also in Florida. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is I just mentioned it to my son last night because I forced him to watch one of the John Lewis documentaries.
Oh, nice. Good.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And it was good. But there were definitely scenes where you had African Americans lining up to vote.
Yeah.
And what they had to go through.
Yeah.
In order to exercise that fundamental right to vote. And I said that it shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah.
We want to make sure it's easy and accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
And so tying it back to this new, and it's not new, we say it's renewed. It's a little different. I mean, I did another interview recently where I was different this time. But are you working on anything in Sacramento, anything that you think we need to be aware of in light of this new global call to action for change at all levels?
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and it's long overdue. And I think, I really think that a lot of people's eyes have been opened, whose eyes weren't necessarily open before, and give us a real opportunity to have honest conversations about some of the systemic racism and injustices that still very much exist in our communities, even in the Bay Area. And so, one of the biggest things that you will have an opportunity to, have your voice heard, that everybody, that every voter in California will have an opportunity to have their voice heard, is around whether or not we should repeal Prop 209, and reinstitute affirmative action.
ACA 5,
ACA 5, which has become proposition, I don't remember, 215 maybe or something like that. I should know all 12 propositions by heart, but we're not close enough to the election yet.
Right.
But yeah, this will be an opportunity for California to have a conversation that some people had 24 years ago. And have that conversation again about whether or not we should take race, ethnicity, gender, or other factors into account with higher education admissions and with hiring, and with contracting. And I say some people had that conversation 24 years ago because anybody who was 41 years old or younger could not vote in that election. And that happens to be me. And so, I made that point to a colleague who then mentioned it in their floor speech when we were discussing this issue. But there are a lot of us in the legislature who are younger than 42, and there are a lot of Californians who I think might think differently than maybe voters did.
We see it with the protests. I mean, it's the younger generation.
Right.
People say they're home because of COVID. And so this is what got them excited and engaged. But it's also because it's a different generation. They think differently.
I mean, you see it with your son, I'm sure. I don't know if you have multiple kids, but you don't. I mean, I'm sure you see it through them. So. Oh
yes, he's 12 and he's very looped in and engaged, and he's only 12. But so are his friends.
Yeah. And I mean, I see it when I talk to students, and I'll tell you, I had a youth town hall. I can't remember if it was earlier this year or last year because it all blurs together now.
It does.
Where the questions that these students asked were so much better than the questions that adults ask.
That we ask. Let's call ourselves out, right? That we ask.
That we ask at other events.
Right.
You know, they were more well researched and
I know.
thoughtful
And great.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that'll be great. There are also bills that are moving through the legislature around specific issues, in particular around kind of criminal justice and police reform issues. I know I'm a co-author of at least 2 of them.
Nice.
One to ban the carotid chokehold maneuver throughout California, and then another one to allow the Attorney General to investigate certain police killings, or I shouldn't say police killings, but officer-involved shootings and serious harm that in some cases, like with George Floyd, were murder. To essentially take that.
I mean, that's automatic, or they would have discretion when they intervene?
My recollection from the last time I saw the version of the bill, and it might have changed in the last couple of weeks, is that it's discretion, and it's between the local district attorney and the attorney general.
Right.
And so, because, you know, oftentimes the local the local district attorneys work so closely with police departments as just a part of their job, that maybe they're not the right person to be doing that investigation and possibly doing that prosecution. So, those are just 2 of the bills that, have been introduced in the last couple of weeks. I bet there are more. And we've done a lot in the criminal justice reform space. We abolished, actually another opportunity that you and every other voter will have is you will have the opportunity to confirm or deny what the legislature did in totally reforming our money bail system in California, and eliminating our money bail system and creating new. We
talked with DA Rosen, and he brought that up.
Yeah.
We did.
I don't know what Jeff thinks about it, but knowing him, he's a very progressive DA. So I'm sure he has problems, but hopefully he can get there in the end.
Right.
But that'll be a proposition on the ballot because people are trying to overturn what the legislature did.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot going on. We've done a bunch. There's so much more to do. But I think, now is a real unique opportunity to make some real reforms that we haven't had the political will to do up until now. So
I agree, and we only have 6 minutes left, Assemblymember Berman, and I cannot end this discussion with, of course, asking about housing bills. Yes. There's so many housing bills, hundreds that are trying to get pushed through, and with everything else going on, and looking through the lens of priorities and what should be a priority. Yeah. Are there any housing bills, based on what you know, that you think will actually make it through committee and that would impact our county that we should be aware of? Because right now it's all speculation with so many bills being pushed through, which ones will actually make it through. Yeah. But, is there one in particular you want to share with us that will directly impact or residents and constituents would care about? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be totally honest, I haven't looked at the Senate bills yet.
And they're mostly, yes, they are.
Yeah, and they pass out of the Senate. We haven't even begun hearing them in Housing Committee in the Assembly. And they have to, and I don't serve on the Housing Committee. I asked to serve on the Housing Committee, but it was not appointed to it 3.5 years ago. So I won't see those bills until they make it through the Housing Committee and then the Appropriations Committee, and then come to the floor. My roommate in Sacramento and 2 of my best friends in the legislature are all on the Housing Committee. And so I hear a lot about these bills
right.
as they're going through the Housing
Breakfast,
Committee.
Lunch, dinner.
A whole, all sorts of stuff. But I think, I do think that COVID has elevated the importance of addressing our housing crisis. And the reason I say that is because if you see a lot of the areas that are in Santa Clara County, but also in LA and in other parts of the state, where the COVID hotspots are the hottest, are oftentimes where, the communities where we have the biggest housing crises, where we have 2-3 families per one family apartment, 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom apartment, or multiple families living in a house, and they can't be safe during an airborne virus pandemic. And so, I do think that if anything, it's made the need to address our housing crisis that much greater. But obviously the devil's in the details in terms of how we accomplish that. And hopefully the state can provide, more resources and more support to our cities to be able to accomplish the goals that I know we all support, which is trying to build more housing in our communities. But I know it's hard. So, I'm sure I'll be hearing from a lot of my
well, as the Legislative Action Committee Chair for the Cities Association, I'll say 95% of the letters that I've signed relate to housing. So that tells you where our minds are. Yeah. No surprise. And another hat I wear is I'm also the Cities Association representative for the RENA committee, the ABAG RENA committee. And I'm sure you've seen that big number, 441,000 plus for the 9 Bay Area counties. And we're still working on the methodology by which that will be distributed throughout the different counties and jurisdictions. But we have actually asked, like many other jurisdictions, to postpone the RENA process. HCD controls that. I doubt we'll have success there. Mm-hmm. But it's really, when you look at a lot of the factors they're relying on to determine the housing needs, some of the data we can test may not be accurate, but some of the data doesn't reflect the COVID impact. Mm-hmm. And so for all those reasons, we've asked to delay the RENA process. I doubt it will happen. And so with everything else happening, we're soon going to have this new big number of housing units that we all need to meet. And again, as you said, we all support the goal. Yeah. But there are other factors that weigh in heavily on how we achieve this goal. So you will be getting our letters, I'm sure. I'm hoping that we can be a little bit more specific in our letters to you and provide better guidance on why we object or why we're concerned about a housing bill, so that we can better help you advocate for us. Yeah,
and the earlier the better. If by the time a bill gets to the assembly floor, it's very hard to actually make amendments. Those often happen as they're moving through the committee process. Right. Because that floor vote isn't the last vote. It's either the third vote or the sixth vote, depending on which house you're in. Yeah. And so, getting those bills, don't just wait till the end. Getting those concerns in and having specific parts, having specific amendments in mind is always helpful. As opposed to just kind of writing in and saying this whole thing sucks, and use it or
no. No, and I think, and your executive director can confirm, I hope we copy you on the letters. I signed them, but I actually can't say for a fact if we do, but that's a good heads up that if we don't, we should definitely copy you on all those bills, even if it's not before the assembly yet. Yeah. So Marc, we have 2 minutes. First, do you have any questions for us? Is there 1 or 2 things you want me to take back to the Cities Association board that you think is important for us to be aware of? Anything?
If anything, just take back thanks. Just say thanks to everybody, because I know how tough it is serving in local government, period. And I've got to imagine it's that much more difficult when everything's remote and, all of us are struggling under, dramatically different budgetary situations than we thought we were going to be in 4 months ago. So just really appreciate all the amazing work that you're doing and that, all the Cities Association members are doing. And I miss not being able to see you in person. And,
I know, I miss it too, but that's our nature. That's why we're in this business.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all the work you're doing and for always being our advocate. Yeah. We know you're in our corner, and we really appreciate it. Special thanks for launching that online suicide prevention training. I think you, with Superintendent Berman, really appreciated that, and I've heard other people mention it as well.
And thank you and make sure all the school districts in Los Altos and around Los Altos all know about it, because it's free, but it's voluntary. And so people have to sign up, to utilize it, but I really hope they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another hat I wear, Mark, is I'm vice chair for CHAC.
Oh, awesome.
So I'll definitely push it through there as well. But thank you for your time. Good luck with everything. Please stay safe. Say hi to Amy. Thanks, Andy, for setting this up. And have a nice day and week.
Awesome. Thanks, Nisa.
Okay.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye, Mark.
Bye.